Hi everybody, my name is Jhanae Bonnick and I am a stage manager. So the stage manager is the central communications hub for any production, as well as the team that ensures that the show happens the same way every night. So we function both as the people who make sure that everyone is on the same page and as the people who, night by night, call the cues and ensure that everyone's ready on time to make sure that the show happens so that every audience sees the same thing. This includes everything from scheduling rehearsals and costume fittings and scheduling of all kinds, to reporting on the show and rehearsals so that everyone knows what has been happening in rehearsal, so that designers can have notes on things that have changed, so that designers can have notes on things that they have given us that we're like, this works great. Can it be shorter? Can it be longer? Can it be bigger? Just literally about communicating back and forth between teams of people so that everyone knows what's happening at the same time, so that when we get into the theater, everyone is on the same page and the show will look like what we expect it to look like and sound like what we expect it to sound like, and that everyone has a solid understanding of what exactly the product that we're producing is. At the same time, the stage management team functions to make sure that the artistic vision of the director and the team is carried out in the way that they expect it to be once the show opens and they leave. So this includes calling the show, which is literally calling the cues that make the show happen. Lighting cues and sound cues, automation, set pieces, actor entrances are all cued by a stage manager. And reporting again to make sure that people who are no longer there at the show on a nightly basis know what happened, know what things need adjustments or changes, and what things worked or didn't work so that we can continue to move forward. Stage management is also responsible for training understudies along with assistant directors and assistant choreographers to make sure that as new people are brought into a show that is running for a long time, it maintains the integrity of the original production. The other thing to know about stage management teams is that they exist with multiple people and that each person on the team has a distinct role. So typically, say you're doing a musical, there is a production stage manager, an assistant stage manager, or more, and a production assistant or multiple. And the way that that functions is that the production stage manager is responsible for like large oversight, huge communications amongst the entire team, and calling the show in general. The stage manager and assistant stage manager are co-responsible for running the deck, working with the crew to make sure that the show happens correctly, cueing actors, and the production assistants are there to A, learn, it is typically a learning position, and B, to do the things that the rest of the stage management team needs to focus elsewhere on. So things like hospitality and line notes and script changes and corrections are all things that the production assistant does. As the central hub of communication for the show, we interact with everyone from performers and designers and crew members to front of house and audience. Like there's a world in which we interact with all of those people, and so it's really important that we have an understanding of kind of human nature. I'm a triple earth sign. I am a Virgo, Capricorn, Taurus, and so I think in some ways, and I'm a middle child, so I think in some ways the emotional intelligence is just like a part of my spirit. It's just like who I am. And I say that with no pride. Like that's not me being like, I'm an emotionally intelligent person. I just think that it's just a part of my nature. But I do think that it's something that it's important that stage managers have, and that it is a skill that can be honed. And I think that I do that every time I do a show, just by being really in tune with the needs of the room and focusing on, the person sitting in the back corner who seems like they're fine, but actually why are they so quiet is something to pay attention to. And noting small little things of, a performer or a crew member who like really loves it when there's peppermint candy in the office. I don't know, I think that it is in my nature to be someone who is relatively empathetic to the things that are happening in the space and be able to respond to them intelligently. But I absolutely think that it's a trainable skill, and it's something that we all work on daily, and that stage management does that at an even higher scale because of the amount of interaction with so many people that we have. In theory, no. The things that a stage manager does, or an assistant stage manager or production assistant does on a day-to-day basis, are the same from show to show, from process to process. The difference is scope. So a stage manager working on a workshop doesn't have to do the same amount of preparation and work, the same amount of detail work as someone working on a full production, because the finished product, the expectation for the finished product is different. And so day to day, no, we're doing the same things in terms of making sure that all the actors are here, writing reports, scheduling the next rehearsal, etc. But that scope is different dependent on A, the scope of the show, and B, the scope of the finished product. So it's both, is this a 2-person play or a 50-person musical? Those will look different, though the jobs are the same. And is it a workshop or a lab, or is it a full Broadway musical? Those will look different. The story of how I got into stage management is a pretty typical one. I was a theater kid in high school. I loved hanging out with those kids who were all doing the musicals and the plays. But acting and performing was not my favorite thing to do. And so I had to find a way to support and be a part of the group without going on stage. And so I kind of fell into stage management that way, both at my high school and through our local community theater, where we did have stage managers, though they functioned sometimes very differently than the way that my job functions now. In theory, we had stage managers, and I did that there as well. It was not my plan to pursue stage management as a career. It was something I did for fun. When I went to college, I was an international relations major, with kind of no real plans as to what I was going to do with that, but theater wasn't on the docket. And it wasn't until I was in college and I kind of realized that all of the theater classes that I was taking for fun were the things that I actually wanted to do, that I decided to switch things up. And so I changed from an international relations major to an English major, and then I added a theater degree. So by the time I graduated college, I had a degree in both theater and English. And then upon graduation, I told myself that I would give stage management a try. I would come to New York and try to give it a go. And that if it didn't work out, I would leave and do something else, whatever else that would be. And I don't know that it necessarily worked out, but it worked out enough that I kept telling myself it was worth it to stay. And so here we are. And I never left. In terms of my career, I credit a lot of how I got where I am because in 2016, I was a production assistant for Hadestown at New York Theater Workshop downtown. Prior to that show, I had worked on a couple of productions as a stage manager at a college downtown, as well as working as a PA on an off-Broadway show, and kind of I interned at the Public, kind of getting my feet wet in terms of what is it like, what does the scope look like at different places. But it wasn't until PAing at New York Theater Workshop that I really understood what the career of this job, this position is like. And that happened both because of the incredible team that I worked with, and also because that show and that the family that show created was incredible. And so I learned so much there from the stage management team and from the workshop staff as to how my job is supposed to function, that it really propelled me. It also propelled me in that a lot of the people that I worked with on that show are people that I still work with to this day, and who have bit by bit, person by person, connected me to others that got my career to where it is. At the same time as I say that, it's not just the people, it's the institution. I worked at New York Theater Workshop 3 times in total, and one of those times led to my Broadway premiere. So it's both the people that I worked with there on Hadestown and the institution itself. So I've done a few virtual shows during the pandemic, some workshops, readings, other full productions. Off the top of my head, 2 that I can think of are I did a reading of Bull Rusher by Issa Davis with Bard at the Gate, and I also did a virtual production of A Burning Church by Jalen Livingston, Alex Hare, and Nehemiah Luckett for the New Ohio Ice House Factory. So those are some things that I've been doing virtually in this kind of landscape. But prior to COVID, I was working as the production assistant for Carolina Change at Roundabout on Broadway. And before that, I was the original stage manager for Slave Play off Broadway at New York Theater Workshop. I was the production stage manager. And I moved with the show when it went to Broadway and served as the stage manager on Broadway. Slave Play was incredible. Things that were different about it were the level of intimacy that was involved in the show. And for me, it was new to work with an intimacy director. So our intimacy director on Slave Play was Claire Warden. She's brilliant and incredible. And really, we could not have done the show without her in the way that she did things. She really set us up for incredible success. She was so great. But I hadn't worked with one before. And so working with an intimacy director was a new experience for me and possibly for a lot of people involved with the production. But Claire made that incredibly easy. Something else that made Slave Play new and different was the amount of care that had to be put into the show in order for it to function every night, both for the performers and for the crew and for the audience. The show is very intense and it requires a lot from the people who both perform in it and have to be an active participant in it every day. You know, our production stage manager on Broadway, Gwen Gilliam, and myself downtown, you know, we had to watch it every night when we called it, and the crew has to be backstage during it every night. And so there's a certain level of care that is required of us as stage managers and of us as a company to like take care of everybody because the material is so intense. And in some ways that was fun, right? Like that was having dance parties before shows and keeping morale high. And in other ways, that was about really respecting boundaries and making sure that things were really crisp and clear in terms of what Claire laid out for us for intimacy, and just making sure that everybody felt safe at any given moment became really important in ways that they're always important, but they felt extra important on Slave Play. I think that if you don't know a ton about stage management, or if it's something that's new to you, it's really surprising to know that there is a human being who speaks the show into existence in some ways, and that when you're watching a show, almost everything that happens is cued by a stage manager. I think that it's not even something I super understood until I really started learning about it in depth in late high school and college, is that when you're seeing a production, everything from light cues and sound cues to sometimes actor entrances to set pieces coming in and out are all cued by the stage manager, and that you're really seeing one person manage all of these things and make sure that they happen at the correct time at the same time, I think is something that people are like, whoa, that's a job. Because I know I certainly felt that way when I was in high school and learning. I think that for this, I think a lot about the people who in our industry who do know what stage management is. And the thing that I wish they asked of me particularly, I don't know that every stage manager feels this way, but I know that after working on a show for so long, have a certain knowledge of the show that can be helpful in the creation of it and in the forward motion of it. And I think that often people forget that stage managers were there the whole time and have this institutional knowledge, not just in terms of, you know, what the director said on any given day to form a scene, but also about what the playwright had in mind. And they were at the production meeting where marketing made the decision about X, Y, or Z. And so I think that all of those things really settle in our brains and our Dropbox accounts and are things that we have access to. And so sometimes I wish people remembered that as we were working, is that as the central communications hub, we actually have access to a lot of information that could be helpful to people as they make new decisions and new choices and move in new directions. Is that sometimes your question may already have been answered, and that often stage management might have the answer to your question. And I think people just forget that, especially once a show is open and kind of running. We forget that there's this person who's been archiving everything and this team that knows, you know. I think the thing I miss the most about my job is the community and the camaraderie, because we figured out how to do it in COVID, right? Zoom is a beautiful thing, and thank you very much. But it's not the same as checking in someone's dressing room after a show, or going to the bar for a drink after to talk about what happened and troubleshoot and figure out. It's not the same as going to see theater together in person and then going to dinner to talk about it. There's just something different about the community that happens when people are actually living and breathing in the same space. And I really, really miss that. I have been working with a group of female identifying theater artists to form an organization called Everybody Black, which is so exciting. We're still a little baby organization and kind of finding our feet. But the plans that we have are incredible, and what we're working on is really great. And so we're working towards building Black power and community in the theater industry. It's something that we think is really important and something that we're going to be working towards. So please, please, please check us out. We're going to have some really exciting things coming up in the next little bit. I worked on Hadestown, downtown at New York Theater Workshop, and the closing night of that show will stick with me forever as one of the craziest nights of a show I have ever experienced. And I think a lot of it is impressed on me because I was so new at the time. So it was closing night, and for context, it was raining outside, and we had just replaced a bunch of cast members. And there were a couple of small faux pas, props dropping, but that's live theater, and we were excited about it. But then there was this transition where one of the performers had to run. He made his exit, and then he had to run, grab a prop, and run all the way around the building and outside to re-enter for another entrance pretty quickly. And he makes his exit, and he doesn't grab the prop. And so I'm backstage at this point, and he keeps going because the night has been harried and it dropped earlier, so it wasn't where it was supposed to be. And that 2 minutes of headset time was so crazy as everyone worked so hard together to try to get him this prop in time for him to go on stage. It was absolute insanity. And the most brilliant, theater workers are amazing, and everyone was like, okay, I'm over here, can you get it to me here, and then I can get it to him there. In the end, it didn't quite work out, and he improvised something different, but that put everyone at this even higher keel of energy, right? So the energy is high because it's closing, and then it's higher because this crazy thing happened and everyone was problem solving on the spot. And then we get to the end of the show, and if you know Hadestown, you'll know the moment that I'm talking about, but if you don't, I won't spoil it for you. But at the end of the show, something very dramatic happens, and very frequently there is silence in the audience. Everyone is shocked. And this happened this night. Event happened, and the audience, gasped and went quiet. And then in this silence, which it's crazy how it happened because, the silence didn't last that long, all of these phones started going off simultaneously. And everyone, again, on headset, were just so amped. We were like, what is that? What's going on? And it was a flash flood warning because it had been raining. And it was raining so hard that New York got a flash flood warning. And so all of these phones went off. And it was crazy because this moment is so dramatic. If you know the show, you know why. And it's the story I always tell when I'm like, so we mean it when we don't silence your phone, turn it off, because there could be a flash flood and it will make noise anyway. It's one of my craziest stories. I think the first thing I want to say to anyone who wants to be a stage manager and is entering the industry is you are going to have a road ahead of you that won't be easy, because COVID is something that none of us have had to traverse before, and we are all figuring out together right now. But We are excited to have you. You should definitely pursue it. It's something that I personally don't think that there's anything else like it. It's such an amazing job, and you should definitely pursue it. And it will just take a lot of resilience and a lot of new learning that all of us are having to learn at the same time right now. I think that's my 2020 caveat to this question before I press on. But advice that I would give is just that to remember that your journey is your journey and it's going to look different than everybody else's. And there are a lot of jobs and there are a lot of stage managers. There are a lot of styles of stage management. There are lots of ways to stage manage. And I think that if you get too caught up in comparing yourself to other people who seem like they are at the same level as you won't get as far as if you just trust your journey and know that there is room for us all and that your career will turn out the way that it is supposed to turn out. That is the biggest advice I can give, because I think far too often we all waste too much time comparing ourselves. And I don't think it's useful, especially in an industry and with a job that is so personal and personalized. So I think that's my biggest piece of advice, is just trust your journey and know that it'll work out. If it's meant to be, it will be. A book that I have recommended to many a person in my time, and specifically during quarantine, and have reread during quarantine, is Emergent Strategy by Adrienne Maree Brown. And if you've already read that, Pleasure Activism, also by Adrienne Maree Brown, which I am in the process of reading. I just think that she's brilliant. And the work that is done in Emergent Strategy that she pulls together can truly change how you view team building and interpersonal relationships, and kind of your view of, not even kind of, I will say it definitively, like it can change your view of the world. That did mine. And so I recommend it highly to literally any and everyone.